I was sitting next to Sergeant Major, the most intimidating rank in the Corps, Sergeant Major Benjamin Hernandez there, and he said to me, to get it right, he said, every good mess night has to have a really good sea story. Is that correct?
Sure.
Can anybody tell me the definition of a really good sea story?
Starts with no shit.
That's close. I heard the real good sea story doesn't allow fact and reality to stand between you and a good story. And you know, earlier tonight we went back to 1880 and back to many, many years with the Lejeune family things in the past, in kind of a time machine. So I decided, I had this vision last night, the time machine goes back to, that goes up forward to the year 2060. You got to envision yourself down now in a humble little ranch down in Solvang, California. An old, retired, 90-year-old Marine Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major Jack McKeon, I think it is, and this was the vision I had. And he's, you ever seen those rusted old John Deere tractors with all the rust and green and everything? And he's going along his fence line, he's got this big manure spreader. And he's going on the fence line one day, he's all crumpled up, well, in his 90s. And all of a sudden there's a big shotgun blast and a bird comes diving out of the sky and falls right between his fence and the tractor. And he looks at it, all of a sudden this big guy, about 6'4", a huge hulking guy with a shotgun, and he's got all this fancy Abercrombie stuff and all those shotgun shells in it and everything. And he's walking along the road, he says, "Hey, old timer, that's my bird there." Sergeant Major McKeon looks at him and says, "Afraid not. Down here, that's my property. It's my bird." This big guy said, "You know who I am? I'm Saul Leibowitz. I'm the meanest, toughest New York lawyer you ever met. I don't get my bird. I'm going to sue one side of your body, down the other." Sergeant Major looks at him and says, "Well, you know, these down here, we this neck of the woods, we kind of don't do that legal stuff. We have another system. It's much easier." Well, what's that? He says, "Well, it's called the three-kick system, the three-kick rule." "What's that?" He says, "Well, the way it works out, you come over here in the fence, and I kick you 3 times, you kick me 3 times, and back and forth, and then whoever first gives up gets the bird." Blair looks at this decrepit old 9-year-old guy all frizzled up on it. He says, "No problem." He gets over the fence, "I'll take it." Sergeant Major gets off the tractor, and all of a sudden he looks like he's 30 years old. Stands up, he's got his old utility trousers and his old boots. He walks up to that big, hulking warrior, walks up to him, and takes full force. He kicks him right where the Mississippi and the Missouri meet. The guy cripples over, goes over, whacks him as hard as he can, right behind the kneecap. The guy goes down. Walks over for his 3rd hit, just whacks him right in the ribs. And Saul's just lying there, grasping for air, grasping for air. Yeah, and then, so finally he gets to the fence and he picks himself up and he says, gets his wind after 2 or 3 minutes, he says, okay, my turn." Sergeant Major looks at him and says, "Nah, that's all right, you keep the bird." I was reflecting, the colonel mentioned the eagle below an anchor, and I have to tell you, there's something special about the Marines. I was at Pendleton recently with Ray Blum and Steve Pettit, and the Marines were getting the eagle below an anchor the ones who were getting out of boot camp, the rite of passage, and they knew what it meant. And the French have an expression. They have a lot of time for expressions, so they don't go to war. However, the French have an expression, "je ne sais quoi." Does anybody know what that means?
I don't know.
Good for a Marine.
As a certain something.
I don't know. Such as I know what.
It means a certain mysterious something. You either get it, understand it, like in the case of the Marines, or you don't get it, and we don't care. You'll never get it. I'll have another sterling example of that. This is a time machine again. This takes us back to 1904. A young man is born in New York City. He's an Irish immigrant family. Only gets schooled to about the age of 7. This family goes out when he's about young, about 12, 14 years old. They go out to Montana, where they settle down. And when he's like 15 years old, you know, recruiters, he joins the U.S. Navy for 2 years. World War I is coming out. This young man serves 2 years in the United States Navy, comes out, serves a couple more years in the United States Army, and then gets out, comes back home to Montana, and on 10 November 1920, he joins, he's a light. He joins the United States Marine Corps. And that, by the way, was a couple years before we had the birthday. 1920, a couple years early before the general started. And so then he goes off to the Marine Corps, serves in the sea duty in the Philippines, comes home, hits the books, goes to school, accomplishes quite a bit, works as a miner, pays his way through school. Then this gentleman becomes a congressman, serves for 7 terms in Congress. Gets elected to the Senate, 24 years in the U.S. Senate. Outstanding legislator, really honorable, square guy. Retires, the president sends him to Japan, which was in a relationship was in trouble. Spent 12 years in Japan, honors, tributes, 12 years in Japan, outstanding ambassador. Came back home to America, served once more on special presidential committees. An outstanding guy. Then about 10 years ago, at the age of 98, this outstanding citizen passes away, dies. And does anybody know where talk about this je ne sais quoi. Does anybody know where this man would be buried? He could be buried in Japan, in a monument, or Montana, or he could be buried up there in Arlington where they have the flame and all the dignitaries. But no, he didn't choose to be buried there. He's buried next to his Irish wife, Maureen, in a very distant, quiet section of Arlington. He's in second row, section 4969, Foxtrot. And on this man's tombstone, a very plain one, it says, Michael Joseph Mansfield, Private, U.S. Marines.
Yep.
Think about that.
Oh, it's wonderful.
That's what I thought about. As some of you may know, I was embedded writing a couple hundred stories for Marines. I was pretty well known as a third-grade journalist. And when I served with these Marines, and some other branches too, but most of all Marines, I wonder if I ever wore the same fabric, because I think our Marines, you gentlemen, are the best we ever had. They weren't that good when I was in. I travel a great deal when I'm asked. I travel, go to some of the schools I've attended, and I go to board meetings, and I'm lecturing at Notre Dame, undefeated Notre Dame, next in April. And when I go to these places, several of the kids have asked me, where do you learn leadership? Well, you know, they don't like the answer. So I've learned over the years, when you don't give somebody an answer they don't like, you tell them straight. Say, look at me. Look at me. Look right into my eyes. I didn't learn leadership in any 101 college course or anything of that nature. I learned leadership 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every minute, in a little island off the coast of South Carolina. I learned it from every NCO and officer who I met. And the reason is really simple. Because they're immersed in a culture of excellence. And this culture is founded in virtue and discipline. Virtue and discipline. Semper Fidelis.